Hi, my name is Bill Cooper and welcome back to the third video in the Windows 10 deployment scenario series. In the second video we set up our MDT folder structures. We imported an operating system, an application, some boot drivers and some model specific drivers. We created a task sequence. We modified that task sequence to enable Windows updates. We added a root certificate injection into the task sequence. We configured our deployment share rules to not support 32-bit machines, add multicast, all that good stuff. We added our custom background and our extra files folder for the 64-bit Windows PE, and we turned on monitoring. One thing that we need to do now is, before we go any further, we need to configure our database rules. So you right click database and choose configure database rules and just go next, finish. What this is going to do is it's going to modify our custom settings.ini and add a whole bunch of stuff into it. Now, what we will have a problem with here is the fact that we need to specify the username and the password because we're connecting over TCP. So we're going to add a couple of lines here. What we're going to do is we're going to do the DB ID, which is the username. That's going to be %user_ID %. The DB PWD password is %user password %. Now these two variables, user ID and user password, they both come from the Bootstrap. Bootstrap runs first, so these variables will be available. The user ID is service.mdtbuild and the user password gets created by the DecodeExit script, and it is the password needed for that account. We've set the SQL user svc.mdtbuild having the same password as the domain account, so we are all in sync there until someone changes the password. So we've got DBID, DB password. We actually need these to be in all of these settings, so I'll go through and add these in now. Okay, so I finished adding the DBID and the DB password to each of these sections here in the custom settings file. There's quite a few of them, one for every different database location. And that's all that we should have to do here. We shouldn't have to come back to that again. So now what we need to do is we need to start setting up our database settings. What we're going to do first is we're going to add some roles. We're going to add a role called Global Settings. Now these are this role, Global Settings, will be applied to everything. So it's going to have a fair few things in here that need to be on every single computer. First thing we're going to do is we're going to give it our domain joining credentials. So the domain admin account in our case is service.mdtjoin. The domains testlab.local. Password is our top secret password. Wait, I can't type. Join domain testlab.local. We won't set an OU at the moment because we're going to do that based on the make and the model and other things. Next thing we want to add in here is the organization name, which shows up on the progress bar, but what we want to have is, we're just going to customize it a little bit. Task sequence ID, so that will tell us we've got Windows 10, OSD computer name, so it will show us the name of the computer it's deploying Windows 10 to, and the site name, so that we see what site it's deploying this computer in, make sure it detected it correctly. I want to set a finish action of reboot. So when it's finished the deployment, it'll reboot. It'll go back to the login prompt when it's ready to use. We don't have to touch it or click any buttons to let it know it's finished. In this particular environment, we're just going to be deploying Windows 10 to everything, so we'll add the task sequence ID Windows 10 to the global settings. And we're going to set the keyboard locale and some other things. In this particular demonstration, all of the sites are actually in the same country, so we can make our we can put a few things in here. We can put the language and we can put the locale, which is the country. If we had sites across multiple countries, we'd want to move this up in, or possibly more of these, depending, up into the location rules, which we'll get to in a minute. The other things we want to do for all computers is we want to skip all of the bits of the deployment wizard. We don't want anything to pop up, just fully automated. yes for all of the skips. And down in custom, we'll see the extra tables that we added, or extra columns we added to the table in the database. So deployment type is going to be new computer. Event service is http ://test Darwin deployment server port 9800, and hide shell yes. Now in this particular environment we want a local admin account on every computer, and it's actually a group called local PC admin, so it'll get added to the local administrators group on the machine. And that's all that we want to do for our global settings rule. Now we're going to have another couple of rules here. We're going to have a rule for desktop computers, so we'll call this desktops. What we want to do is we're going to put them into a specific organizational unit. If you remember, in our Active Directory we have a sub-OUs for the site name. We'll switch back to management for a second, I'll show you that. So under Test Lab Computers we've got an OU for each of the sites, and in each of the sites we've got an OU for desktops, an OU for laptops, and a sub-OU for pool laptops. So we need to join the computers into the right folder here, in the right site depending on where they are. So the machine object OU for desktops, let's copy and paste this. So OU desktops, OU site name, OU computers, OU test lab. That site name variable will come based on the location of the computer. And the other thing we want to do here is we want to add our application bundle, which we haven't created yet. Good stuff. So let's go back over to applications. In the root we're going to make a new application. It's going to be an application bundle, and we're going to call it desktop bundle. We're going to have a new, we're going to have another one, application bundle, and we're going to call it laptop bundle. Laptops might need, I don't know, 3G connection software or VPN software or something else that you wouldn't normally have on your desktops. We're going to make a new application bundle, and we're going to call this one Lenovo X1 Carbon Type 20AS, and we're going to add another bundle for the other types of Lenovo Carbons that are in this environment. Lenovo X1 Carbon Type 20BT. I'm not too sure if they need different software, but they might, and this is how you would do that. So then you might have a new folder here and call it Lenovo, and then under Lenovo you might have a folder for X1 Carbon Type 20AS, and there's probably a number of applications that need to be installed on X1 Carbon, so you'd add them all into here, and then in the application bundle you'd add them all in. Give an example of that by setting up the desktop bundle. If you go into the properties of the bundle and then in the dependencies tab, this is where you can add the applications. We've only got one application here, so this is going to be a very simple demonstration. We'll add our one application in, and we'll put it where we want it in the list. This allows us to set the order that we're installing applications, so we can install the .NETs before we install the Javas, before we install Office, before we install something else. And it's very easy with the desktop bundle to do this. The other good thing of using bundles is you set desktop bundle once, it installs on all desktops. If you decide you want to add or remove software from desktops in the future, you just change the bundle. You won't have to go back and change any of the settings on the computers, because the bundle never changes, just what's in the bundle gets updated and changed and moved up and down in different orders and whatnot. So desktop's going to get Office, laptops are going to want to have Office as well, no doubt. And then if we'd added a bunch of applications under Lenovo X1 Carbon Type 20AS, we would then go and add them into the list here, whatever software it needs. However, we don't have anything here at the moment, so not a very good demo. Okay, so now that we've got our application bundles, if we go back to Roles, Desktops, Applications, we can add a light touch application and we can use our desktop bundle. Let's add another role. Let's call it Laptops. And the details of the laptops, we want to join them to a specific computer OU. So we'll find the machine object OU setting. There it is. And I'll copy and paste one that I prepared earlier. Same thing again, it just sets OU laptops, OU site name, OU computers, OU test lab. So site name comes from the location settings, which we'll set up in a minute. And we want an applications, light touch application, because the laptops are going to want to have the laptop bundle. And we're going to add another one because we have these pool laptops in this environment. Once again, pool laptops go into a different OU. So we find the machine object OU settings around about here. So OU pool, OU laptops, OU site name, OU computers, OU test lab. Pool laptops are still going to want to have the laptop bundle. And pool laptops, we actually add an extra administrator, which is basically everyone, the domain users get get local administration privileges on the pool laptop. So if they grab a pool laptop and run out the door and they jump on a plane, they end up somewhere where they don't have internet and they need to install some sort of application. We can't remotely connect in and type in the password. Might as well just give them full admin access to those. So we've got our roles set up. Next thing we want to do is want to set up some locations. So let's make a new location for Darwin, which is our headquarters site. We're going to add the default gateway in Darwin is 10101. Under details, we're going to go down to site name and give it the site, which we're using. We're using this variable as part of the machine object OU in other locations. We want to set the SL share so that we copy the logs from the computers back up to the server. So SL share, we're going to copy the logs to the Darwin deployment server deployment logs folder. We're going to use a particular WSUS server, which is in the Darwin site, which is HTTPS test Darwin management server 8531. We're going to set our time zone name based on this location. The time zone name in Darwin is Oz Central Standard Time, and at the very bottom in our custom settings we're going to add deploy root, which is where it's going to copy its files from, and that is the Darwin deployment server deployment share. Next one we're going to add is Perth. The default gateway in Perth is 10.2.0.1. Under the details, what we want to do is we want to set the site name to Perth so that we can use that as part of the machine object OU a little bit later on. We want to have the SL share where it copies the logs to on a server in Perth, no doubt. Let's copy this from my notes. So the Perth management server deployment logs share, we want to tell it the WSUS server that is in this site, which is test per MS01 8531. We want the time zone name for Perth, which is W Australia Standard Time, and we want to set the deploy root, which is where it's going to copy its files from. Deploy root is going to be the Perth management server deployment share $. Now I'm not too sure if I've made these deployment logs shares down on those servers, but we'll look at that later. That's it for Perth, and we're going to add we have our third site, which is Sydney. The default gateway in Sydney is 10.3.0.1, and we're just going to set all the same things but with Sydney settings. So the site name is Sydney. Find the SL share and set that to test SID MS01 deployment logs $. There's is a WSUS server in Sydney, which is that one. The time zone name in Sydney is Oz Eastern Standard Time, and the deploy route in Sydney is going to be the management server in Sydney in the deployment share dollar. So that's it for our locations. Now we're going to set up some makes and models. First one we're going to set up is for our Dell Optiplex 9020. So the make is Dell Inc. The model is Optiplex 9020. In this particular environment, we're naming the computers a little bit differently depending on what make and model they are. So we're going to go down to the OSD computer name section, OSD computer name, and I'm going to call it TST-D- the last 6 digits from the serial number. That's what this whole block here means. We're using the rightmost 6 digits from the serial number variable. So every computer will have a unique name, and from the name you can then perhaps identify the computer based on a serial number sticker. Dell Optiplex 9020s, they're going to have the role of global settings and desktops, and that's it for Dell Optiplex. Next one we're going to do is we're going to add our Lenovo. What do we have? 20AS0001. Now Lenovo Carbons or X1 Carbons, they're going to have a specific computer name again. So we find the OSD computer name section. So TSTX for X1 Carbon, and the rightmost 6 digits of the serial number. That'll be a pretty common theme through all of them, the rightmost 6 digits. But we're just going to change this whether it's an X1 Carbon, a Dell, or whatever. The X1 Carbons are going to want to have the global settings role and the laptops role. And because we've got multiple Lenovo Carbons with different model numbers, we're going to add the 20BT as well. This one is going to have the same OSD computer name because it is just another X1 Carbon, and it's going to have global settings and laptops. Now we're also going to add one in here for Microsoft Corporation Virtual Machine, so that while we're testing this with the virtual machine, we can be sure that it is definitely applying the settings, because what we're going to do is we're going to have a computer name with a V in it. So if we see that we get TST-V-something, then it's definitely applied this, and we're going to have global settings and desktops on the virtual machine. Now we haven't actually used our pool laptops yet. Pool laptops are probably just going to be a handful of laptops out of the overall greater fleet, so you're not going to set an entire make and model to be pool laptops, because 90% of these might be assigned to users and a small amount might be in a pool that people can just grab and run with as they need them, book them out in a calendar system. So what we need to do is for each of the pool laptops, we're going to add them in under computers, and we're going to call this like maybe pool laptop 001. If you wanted to, you could add your asset tags in here. You could put the serial number in of the machine, and you could, most importantly, put the MAC address. Fake MAC address, the very, very first network device in the universe, this one. Now this pool laptop, we're going to add the role for pool laptops. So it's going to get the other roles, it's also going to get this role, and hopefully these settings will actually overwrite. We'll come to that later. So that's it for configuring our database roles, locations, makes and models, and specific computers that get specific settings that aren't based on the make and model. So computers in Darwin are going to be joined to the right OU. They're going to get specific desktop and laptop application bundles based on what they're in here. They're going to be joined to the domain based on the global settings role, all that good stuff. that's about it for this. The video, we're up to about 20 minutes again, so we'll cut the video at this point, and in the next video we will update our deployment share, we'll create our boot images, we'll push the boot images out to the Windows deployment servers across the 3 sites, and we might even get around to testing it if we have time. So please join us again for the next video. Thank you very much.